Good morning, live from TIFF 2024, and I have a review from one of the films that I was most looking forward to seeing here at TIFF, and I'm talking about Luca Guadagnino's historical romance film, Queer, starring Daniel Craig, a film that Guadagnino has called his most personal. Let's talk about it. So when I first saw this movie, it was yesterday. It was the last movie of the day, and I had completely burned myself out. I was fighting not crashing out during the movie. So I actually went back to watch Queer this morning at an early screening, and man, when you're rested, this movie is much better, let me tell you. Based off William S. Burroughs' autobiographical novel Queer, it centers around Lee, who's a middle-aged addict with a liking for guns and drugs. He's wandering the streets of post-war Mexico City, wandering into different bars, and eventually runs into a younger man named Allerton. In terms of style, Queer is actually an accumulation of all of Luca's work thus far. You know, we get the deep desire for connection and sensuality that you get in Call Me By Your Name. You get the longing and themes of addiction seen in Bones and All. And you get the abstractness-like sequences seen in Suspiria. The beginning of Queer is actually pretty straightforward story-wise. There's almost a classic Hollywood vibe where Daniel Craig's character kind of feels like a film noir detective that spends his time in moody bars in Mexico City. The sets of Mexico, like the worn-out buildings and the dusty bars, it's really beautiful to look at. The sets are amazing, and it really helps set the atmosphere. But what's even more eye-catching is Daniel Craig, who is so incredibly magnetic as Lee. His character of Lee is charming in his own way. He's like this extroverted rascal, but underneath all that gregariousness lies someone who lives for love and human connection. Luca Guadagnino actually uses this really interesting kind of technique of like double exposures that helps express Lee's inner desires. So while Lee is sitting still in one shot, he'll transpose another shot on top showing Lee reaching out to touch the face of Allerton. It's really effective. I think it's really well done. And let's talk about Drew Starkey, by the way, who I think also really draws you into his character. He's very intentionally designed to not be able to get a read on him. You know, while Craig's Lee is very open, Starkey's Allerton is very reserved and closed off, and frankly, seems pretty indifferent towards Lee. Though it's love at first sight for Lee, it takes a few drinks for Arlington, or Eugene is what they call his name is, to let his guard down. His character is actually quite difficult to, kind of access and understand his motives, because I don't think his character understands himself all that well either. The sex scenes between Starkey and Craig are nearly as passionate and sensual as anything Guadagnino has ever done. Genuinely, I don't think anyone directs sex scenes with as much feeling and passion as Guadagnino. I think he's the best in the game when it comes to it. In the sex scene, Craig shows a more tender side to his character, someone who longs for intimacy and gentle love. Jason Schwartzman is also in the film. I was really surprised by him. He's a little heavier set than he usually is, and he brings a very nerdy quality to his character. When we first meet him, actually, I love that he just comes in, he hops on the bar stool, and then like Luca does a shot of his feet, not being able to reach the floor. I thought it was really funny. But his scenes with Craig are always very playful and fun to watch. I think the first half of the film is my favorite. I really was enjoying kind of like the world building that was going on in this little town in Mexico, and I was even starting to get to know the streets and where the bars were. But the second half of the film kind of shifts into more abstract territory, where Lee suggests taking a trip to South America to seek out ayahuasca. Why he's desperately seeking out ayahuasca is because he's interested in its telepathic powers. Now, I know many of you guys are watching this right now. You're probably like, wait, what? Huh? That took a hard left. Well, that's kind of how the film feels as well. I'm not sure I really caught the reason why he's so interested in telepathy, but I assume it's because, with the closed off Allerton who doesn't communicate his feelings, I think he wants to find out what Allerton really thinks of him. This section is definitely the strangest section. There's some kind of random snake run-ins like you would see in Indiana Jones. And it's also a section that we meet the unrecognizable Leslie Manville. She plays a snake-wrangling very unhygienic expert of ayahuasca that lives in the middle of the jungle. I know there was a lot of speculation wondering what role Leslie Manville was going to play in Queer, and her playing this role was definitely not on my bingo card, but she's clearly having a lot of fun in the role, and I enjoyed watching her. So naturally, when ayahuasca is mentioned in a film, you're going to get an hallucination sequence. It's going to happen. And here we get the strangest but oddly most beautiful looking drug tripping out sequence I've ever seen, where Lee and Allerton are almost doing interpretive dances and their bodies are quite literally melting and forming together. The second half is still pretty interesting, but it does ask you to take ayahuasca seriously. And to be honest, I don't know how ayahuasca works, but I struggle personally with getting emotionally invested in watching people tripping balls in the middle of the jungle. Despite it being a connection unlike anything Leslie Manville has seen in all her ayahuasca-inducing experiences. The film's final moments doubles down on its abstractness and recalls even 2001's Space Odyssey. It's very haunting and alluring, but it kind of feels like a movie on its own. Queer is a pretty challenging movie that has a lot of elements to it, and it's hard to take in all at once. I felt like I really connected to the film's first half a lot, and then the second half feels a little bit more sporadic and wandering. In the Q&A, Luca described that the book was kind of incomplete, and in many ways, this movie also feels kind of incomplete. I can't even guess what was in those 40 minutes that were cut from this film. But with that being said, there's still a lot to admire about this film. The cinematography by Sayed Boumakdipram has a dreamy but yet moody aesthetic. It's wonderfully lit. And there's so many also great song selections throughout this entire film that I never thought would be used over like a 1950s period film. Songs like Nirvana, Come As You Are. There's also a commonly used melody through the film by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross that I think really resonated with Lee's sad emptiness that he feels inside and deep need to connect. Justin Kurwiskis' writing is strong, and despite the challenge of adapting a novel, has a lot of great lines of dialogue. And again, the location. I don't think this was even shot in Mexico, but there's just so many memorable sets, and Luca Guadagnino always gives you something beautiful to look at. The film takes a strange detour. It might lose some people. However, the film really hinges on Daniel Craig's performance, and he is really, really, really incredible in this film. He's charismatic on the surface, but shows a deeply saddened and heartbreaking desire underneath, and it's very moving to watch. When mentioned by one character, "You look good, Lee," his response is, "I do?" He almost says it in a way that he's surprised, like he's surprised that people can't see his personal anguish that he feels inside. Only someone of Craig's ability could deliver 2 words and have it mean so much. As layered as Craig's performance is, the film is also layered with a lot of symbolic meaning and arresting imagery that I have suspicion Queer gets better with every viewing. So I'm going to give Queer a 8 out of 10. But let's go ahead and let's discuss Queer and the Oscars. So I don't think the Academy is going to touch this film. I think it's deserving of a lot, actually. I think the production design and the score were highlights for me. However, it's a film that requires a lot of deep analyzation and thought. And I know when I saw it the first time, half asleep, I was really taken back at first by its wandering nature. Watching it the second time, that initial shock was gone, and I was able to watch it with fresh eyes, and I liked it a lot more. But I don't know if the Academy's going to go for it. I mean, a lot of times these movies that get nominated for picture, you got to be able to watch it and get it on the first go around. But maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I mean, when I think about a movie like Tar doing so well a couple years ago, it does give me some hope that maybe they can embrace a film like Queer. I think Daniel Craig, though, is in. I think he's in. I think the win is still even possible since he's playing a kind of rather larger-than-life type character. There's not one big Oscar scene, I will say, but he's consistently very magnetic. Other than that, I think everything else is kind of maybes. Like Best Supporting Actor, maybe. I would love to see Leslie Manville get in for supporting actress. I think that'd be really great. I would love it. Other possibilities could be costume, production design, and score. And the long shots would probably be adapted screenplay and director. I think the most likely scenario is probably like 1 to 3. Daniel Craig might be the sole nomination, or maybe it nabs like 1 or 2 random nominations, like supporting and costume. Other than that, unfortunately, that's all I see Queer getting. If Justin Kariskis was nominated this year, I actually think he stands a better chance with challengers. But due to like the period piece kind of elements, if Luca got in for director, I feel like it would be for this. It's weird how I feel that way. But anyways, those are my thoughts and review for Queer. Let me know though, is Queer something that you're looking forward to seeing? Let me know what Guadagnino film is going to do better with the Oscars, Challengers or Queer? I have much more reviews from TIFF coming your way, so feel free to hit the subscribe button down below. Follow me on Twitter for immediate reactions to the films, links in the bio. Thanks always for watching, and until next time, I will see you at TIFF.